Turning now to some political analysis, Molly Ball, who has been with The Atlantic for 6 years, was just named national political correspondent for Time magazine. She'll move over there at the end of the month. Congratulations, Molly. David Ignatius is a columnist for The Washington Post, and Jonah Goldberg is senior editor at The National Review. David, I want to start with you. Before we move on to the Iran deal, these comments by Senator Corker about the Secretary of State, it's extraordinary. What do you make of it?
They are critical in a way. The comments about Trump's view of the Secretary, I can't remember anything quite like it. What we saw with Secretary Tillerson just now is that he can take a punch. He is an unflappable guy. He sat here and you asked him, about the comment that he'd been castrated, and he looked back and said, "This is a president who's unconventional. He likes action-forcing events. He clearly gets the way the president operates, and he's decided he can live within those constraints." To be Secretary of State and go around the world talking to foreign leaders when it's been asserted by a leading senator that you've been castrated, not an easy challenge, but we saw the Secretary of State who clearly is ready to keep doing that.
Molly, on the Hill, not everybody rushed to Corker's side, but also didn't denounce him really much either. Is this a moment and we're going to move on, or is this, what do you make of it?
Well, it's, for one thing, Senator Corker only said out loud something that a lot of people already thought, and that we could see publicly with the undercutting of the Secretary of State by the president. And you had him sitting here just a few minutes ago, basically saying in euphemistic terms, yes, I don't know what he's going to do from 1 minute to the next either. And that's just the way things are. But you are seeing now in moments like the tiff with Corker that the Republicans are not afraid of Trump anymore, and that the relationship is so badly broken between Trump and Capitol Hill that I don't know that there's any repairing it unless they can find a way to actually get something done, as Senator Graham was saying. But Republicans on the Hill have been bashed by the president, perhaps deservingly. They don't have a lot to fall back on in terms of accomplishments, and so they're not super pleased with him.
Do you think the president can fix this, Jonah?
Well, I don't think he thinks there's much to fix. I think, he's, 71 years old. He's not going to change. This is who he is. And I think one of the things that Washington is still grappling with is we all like to think of the president as the boss, right? That's his role, as the boss. But he's also broken the blood-brain barrier between reality show culture, TV culture, and politics, and he's also the talent. And as you may know in this business, there's some people on TV a lot who have very high expectations about bowls of green M&Ms and how everything has to be the right way. And he wants to be treated like the talent, not just the boss. And that's very difficult to do in politics. And that's why we keep having these sort of eruptions. This Corker episode is not the last one, and it wasn't the first one. And it's going to be going on. That's the Trump show.
Yeah. David, what do you think about this idea of good cop, bad cop? So one of the criticisms of the president is he undermined Secretary Tillerson on North Korea, saying, you're wasting your time, Rex. On the other hand, isn't there a way in which that could help the Secretary of State who says, I've got a president here who thinks I'm wasting my time, you better prove, he's ready to go do military action?
It may be that this disruptive, destabilizing, bad cop, this temperamental president gives you some maneuvering room with China. I think it probably is true that the Chinese have been destabilized by this president, and that they've opened up some space. They're more cooperative on North Korea than they have been previously, and the president clearly is hoping, as he gets ready to go to China next month, that he's going to get help from North Korea. Is it helping with North Korea itself? How does it affect Kim Jong-un, this very irrational, we think, North Korean leader? And there you have to really worry that getting in this tit for tat, this kind of playground argument with a guy who's speeding to have nuclear capability is not a good idea. That is not what a careful steward of American security would do. And I think that's one of the things that's worrying people around town. I hear lots of credit for the president's policies on China and the kind of bad cop side of that, not on North Korea.
Jonah, what do you make of the Iranian decision by the president and where we go from here?
Yeah, look, first of all, I thought it was a terrible deal. I thought it was structured in a way that was front-loaded all the rewards for Iran and put them on, as Senator Graham was saying, and put them on a path to a bomb. I think Donald Trump has, and I'm critical of Donald Trump about all of these things, but I think he's absolutely right on this, in that sending this to Congress is in many ways sort of a middle ground position. He's not pulling out of the treaty. It's not even a treaty, which was one of my problems with it. I did enjoy the interview with the Iranian foreign minister, who, first of all, seemed very, very concerned about America's reputation in the world, which is very considerate of them. And I loved the idea that they were worrying about America's credibility in the UN and how outrageous it is for America to violate UN resolutions. Iran violates UN resolutions daily. It is doing it right now. It violated 2231. It's arming Hezbollah, which it's not allowed to do. And the idea that somehow Iran can somehow take the high road in all of this, I find ridiculous.
Well, and Molly, clearly Senator Graham was working Jonah's point, which is you want to defend an agreement with them? You know, they're doing all of these bad things. He thinks he can get 60 votes for something out of the Senate. What do you think? Well,
and he also said that Trump is keeping a campaign promise, and I think that's what really mattered to the president. I think he's clearly frustrated that he hasn't been able to get more done, particularly through the Congress, and he wants to keep some of those promises that a lot of his supporters are being frustrated, are getting frustrated, aren't being kept. So it reminds me very much of what he did on DACA, which was to find a way to thread the needle between, if I change the status quo, people will be mad. But if I don't, the people who wanted me to challenge the status quo, the people who wanted me to be disruptive, the people who, so many of the Trump voters I spoke to, it wasn't about a particular ideology. They just wanted to see somebody break through the gridlock and get something done. The problem is when you have an administration and a party that are divided on these issues, warring factions, and a president who has no particular ideological center, he doesn't lead them in a particular direction, and so you end up with these on the one hand, on the other hand, situations where the status quo essentially is maintained.
David, can the needle be thread here, which is essentially keep the deal but change the deal in Congress?
Most analysts think that it will not be possible to get Iran to agree to changes. They will not reopen the deal. I think we're heading into a period in which the agreement and all the issues that surround it will be in limbo. And so I think there's a real question about whether that's in America's or Israel's security interest. This was something that was locked down. You can say, well, it's a terrible problem in 15 years, but right now it's pretty much locked down. A lot of issues now are open. The needle threading will be working with Congress to adopt things that would apply to U.S. policy but wouldn't go to the deal itself. And I think he probably will get away with those. If I heard the Iranian foreign minister right, he was saying, we will not be the first to withdraw from this deal. So if you don't do things that actually are in violation of the deal, it's probably in our interest to stick with it. What I'm hearing from Europeans, genuine unhappiness about this. They want the United States to be the sort of fixed North Star in foreign policy, and they find us very erratic. And I think they're genuinely upset. Anybody in the administration who thinks, oh well, we'll get the French, I don't hear that.
Yeah. Jonah, let me switch to domestic politics quickly. A pretty effective week for the president undoing some pillars of the Obama legacy, not only on the Affordable Care Act, but the Clean Power Act. What did you make of this week, particularly with respect to health care and what the president's trying to do? Yeah,
I think what the president is doing, or what the administration is doing, is reacting to the fact that, as Lindsey Graham said earlier, Congress can't get anything done. And so Donald Trump is trying to accumulate a record of talking points about things that he has gotten done. I think on this too, the administration's on the right side of the argument on the health care thing. These payments were ruled illegal by a court, but the problem, and this is the problem, Trump, for good or ill, is shoving all this stuff on Congress. As a Article 1 guy, I think that's great because I want Congress to step up. It's the first branch of government. It's not stepping up, and that dysfunction empowers people like Steve Bannon and others to basically tear apart the Republican Party. And if Congress doesn't start getting things done, I do think you could see the dissolution of the Republican Party. It's already basically split into three parties as we speak.
And quickly, Molly, Charlie Denton, the congressman, retiring Republican from Pennsylvania, said that now President Trump owns health care as an issue. You can't blame Obama anymore. Do you think that's right, and will that play out that way politically?
It certainly appears to be the case in polls. It certainly was the way it played out for President Obama. I mean, in the 2010 midterms, Obamacare was the dominant issue, and even though it hadn't been implemented yet at all, people blamed the administration in power for anything they didn't like about their health care, and I think that was a big political reason that Democrats got, in the president's words, shellacked. And so this is a tricky issue, a tough issue. Trump's not wrong when he says Republicans spent 7 years promising to do this, and then there was nothing on his desk when he got there. So yeah, I think that they all own it.